Heat embossing complete background panels with different colors can be tricky. Here I use a unique background stamp which makes it very easy, but I'll also show you how to do this with your own silhouette stamps and simple masking. Take advantage of the discount code below, and while you're there, be sure to like and subscribe. These are the new Wow Alexandra Renke powders, and these colors are just gorgeous, you guys. Here I have a green, a yellow, and a purple, which are very much Mardi Gras colors. And inside of these, you've got a translucent powder, so the green is the translucent powder, and then you have these chunky white pieces, which are ultra high. Ultra high are thicker, they're larger granules, and there is a trick to heat embossing with these that I'm going to show you in this technique video. So be sure to keep watching so that you learn how to keep those white pieces on your projects. As always, all of the supplies are listed in the description down below. The Altenew Bold Floral Drape stamp set will make this project very easy because you can see there's a stamp for the negative space of the background. And that was really the look that I was going for. I wanted to have a dark background with bright florals on top. So I've just put some temporary adhesive on the back of a piece of Neenah Classic Crust Solar White 80-pound cardstock, and it's cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I've offset it in my MISTI and adhered it with some tape because I need that overhang so that I am able to stamp the full background panel. You can see that the stamp extends over that. And I've set this up in my regular size MISTI so that I can stamp it more than once. Anytime I have a large background stamp, I do want to stamp it more than once to make sure I get good coverage. This is the Wow embossing pad. It's an ultra slow drying clear sticky ink, and I'll stamp this a second time off screen. So I decided to go with green in the background, and this is Bella's Forest. Again, this is a Wow and Alexandra Renke collaboration embossing powder, and I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle this on. Now, shake up your container before you start so that you get a good dispersion of the white and the green pieces. And you can see I'm just sprinkling it on and catching the excess in the coffee filter so that I can funnel that back into the container. And I'll just hold on to one of the pieces where the flower is in that negative space. And you can see that I'm not getting very much white on here. There's a few of the granules. I want to get a little bit more, so I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more on the top where the card is just flat. And I'll very, very lightly tap this off so that I can keep some of that white on there. Now you can't see too many of the white granules now, but you will see them once we heat emboss. The trick to using the ultra high powders is to make sure that you start your heat embossing from behind the cardstock. You want to heat up the translucent powder so that it embeds those ultra high pieces. This is the same for glitter embossing powders, so you can see some of those white granules melting. So start heating it from behind, start melting that powder, and the ultra high will stick in those. Then you can come to the front. So you can see some of those white granules. I'm going to have much larger granules on the flowers, and you'll see that in just a moment. I love this muted green shade. On the back of the packaging, you'll find the layering guide. Now, these are pretty easy. What's different about this is the white space that's left over. These flowers don't fit exactly in the space. So you want to refer to your layering guide if it's a little tricky for you to figure out which part of the flower is which. It can be a little confusing because, as I said, there's quite a bit of white space left around the flowers and then also the leaves. Here I have Manuela's Honey embossing powder, and I'm going to heat emboss these flowers individually so that I can vary the color that I use. For some of them, I will stamp a couple at a time once I kind of figure out what kind of pattern I want to do with the colors. So here you can see there's more ultra high left on this yellow flower, and you can see the thick granules of it. So I start heating from behind, and then once I get that embossing powder melted, I'll come to the front and make sure that everything is melted. I love the look of the ultra high with these. I'll speed through the purple flower, and I'll edit out a lot of this because it's a repetitive process. That way we can finish up this panel and move on to the second technique. Check out that ultra high and how random it is. It's almost like splatter or speckle. I love the look of it, and this entire panel is heat embossed except for those white negative spaces. I think this is a really cool stamp set, and this is just the look that I was going for with this background. Here's a couple close-ups so you can see the texture and the ultra high blended in with these translucent powders. With your translucent powders, you get a high gloss, and the ultra high is more of an opaque white finish. So once I created this one, I thought it would be good to show you guys how you could do this with a regular stamp set or one of your silhouette stamps. Now, this is Altenew Zigzag Floral. If you have any Build-A-Flower stamp sets or layering stamp sets, those are great. I also have the coordinating die set here, which I'll need. The layering stamp sets are great because you have a solid stamp, an outline stamp, and varying levels of detail. Now that comes in handy because although I want a silhouette stamp set to create the same kind of look as the first card, I also wanted some detail in it. So I searched through my stash to find silhouette stamps that also had a little bit of detail. You're going to be more likely to find that in your layering stamp sets. So this time I'm just going to use acrylic blocks and I'll stamp the flowers all over the background. But I want to make sure that I leave space not only for the negative space background, like I want to recreate that green background, but I also need space for leaves. So I'm going to pick 2 of the leaves here. I've got those on blocks and I'll go ahead and stamp these. Now, I end up masking all of these flowers. I should have gone ahead and masked these flowers at this point, but I figured that I could just knock the embossing powder off of the already embossed flowers anyway, which is pretty easy to do, so it's up to you. You could either mask your flowers at this point, which I think in the long run is easier, or go ahead and do it this way. I stamped all the leaves in clear embossing ink, and then I'll heat emboss them with clear gloss embossing powder. Now, you could use either clear gloss or you could use opaque white. The flowers in the background are really shiny, and so I wanted the leaves to have the same shine as the flowers, and that's why I went with clear gloss. Opaque white is not quite as glossy as the clear gloss, so although you'll get the same look, you know, the leaves will be white whether I use opaque white or clear gloss. Again, I wanted the same finish on my leaves as I had on my flowers. So I'm just using a dry paintbrush to knock off that excess clear embossing powder. In the end, you guys, you probably could just heat emboss that clear part and you may not even see it, but I didn't want to take the chance, so I went ahead and knocked that off. Now, I've gone ahead and cut a bunch of masks from masking paper with the coordinating die. Because the die cut is larger than the floral image, it'll leave that nice white halo around our image that's similar to our original design. If you don't want the white halo around the image, then you'll need to fussy cut your masks. After I mask all the flowers and leaves, I'll press the embossing pad onto the whole panel to ink up the negative space of the background. And unfortunately, I don't have that on film, but I'm going to talk you through it so that you know exactly what to do. As I said, when your leaves and flowers are masked, press your embossing pad onto the full panel and then sprinkle over your embossing powder. This embossing powder is called Shiny Sky, and it's also a Wow Renke collaboration. So once you get it sprinkled on, remove your masks and then heat emboss or melt the embossing powder. Now I got a bit of a patchy result, so what I did is I replaced the flower masks only, not the leaves, and I went ahead and ink blended a similar ink color over the whole panel to kind of fill in those areas. The other thing that did for me is it filled in the negative space on those leaves to add the detail to the leaves, which I think was really important for the overall design of this particular card. This second technique was definitely more work and took more time, but I think the results were worth it. If you learned something and you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe down below, and I'll see you soon with more inspiration. Thanks so much for watching.